to today's webinar, Vision to Reality, Promoting Student Safety in the Digital Age. My name is Claire Marino. I'm the head of product marketing here at Lightspeed, and I'll be kind of your host for today's session. Thank you for joining us today. Or, I'm sorry, can someone... We're having a bit of a sound moment, so thank you for your patience. Okay, great. So thanks for joining us today, or if you happen to be watching on demand, thank you for taking the time. This is an important topic, and we're excited to have so many of you here today. We have people from across the United States, as well as 10 countries, including the United Kingdom, Hong Kong, and even Sweden. We're excited to get started. So first, I want to draw your attention to the poll. Please take a minute to fill out the poll. The question is, what is your biggest student safety and wellness challenge today? We'd love to hear from all of you so we can kind of guide this discussion. Also, just a bit of housekeeping. This session is obviously being recorded. And it is the second webinar in our two-part series, United for Safety. You'll be getting this webinar recording as well as our first webinar, which featured district leaders from San Marcos Unified School District, Bloomington Public Schools, and the founder and executive director of Safe and Sound Schools, Michelle Gay. I think you'll find that really, really interesting. Also, we want this session to be actionable. We have obviously a chat, so please feel free to, provide your responses, your feedback, what you're doing at your district or school today, and what you're looking for. Also ask questions. We have team members who are moderating that chat and will be answering or providing resources in real time, but we will also be having a question and answer at the end. So would love to hear questions you have or additional things that you need more detail on. Okay, perfect. I want to introduce our panel. So first off, I want to introduce Brian Thomas. He's the CEO of Lightspeed and has been a key leader in the company for most of our 25-year history. Thank you for joining us, Brian. Amanda Sutter is our Vice President of Product Management. She's leading our Lightspeed Alert product and safety and wellness solution. Hello, Amanda. Colin McCabe, he's our Director of International Operations, bringing us that international flavor and joining us from sunny Scotland. Thank you, Colin. And then last but not least, sorry, Jamie Ryan. He's our EVP of Operations and General Counsel. He also heads up our Lightspeed Safety Specialist team and is going to give us some great perspectives there. Okay, great. Let's kick off. So first, I just want to start with a level set of some statistics. Obviously, you may have seen before, but understanding that we are in a situation where we need to be advocates in supporting student mental health and securing our schools across the country and world. 70% of students seek mental health support at schools. This is from the National Center for Education Statistics. According to the CDC, suicide is the second leading cause of death for young people ages 10 to 14. And also when we think about the violence happening in some of our schools, we see these statistics, which are alarming. They are from the FBI. And even though they're alarming, they also give us a little bit of insight into the fact that we may have the tools to prevent some of these difficult situations and disasters from happening in our schools, knowing that 51% of attackers engage in observable planning behaviors. If we can circumvent that, maybe we can make a difference. So as we begin this discussion, I want to actually turn to Brian, if you can kick us off today and give us your perspective on what you have seen over the last 20 years working with schools and why Lightspeed is so involved in this.
Sure. Thank you all for having me. One of the one of my best friends who was in my wedding about 10 or 12 years ago called me to tell me that his son had committed suicide as a result of bullying on social media. And that really impacted me. I think that in combination with the Parkland shooting, which at the time was a customer of ours, and we had the data that we thought we could make clearer and more accessible and more actionable, it became a mission of ours. Protecting students has always been our mission and a major part of our culture, but it's also uh, very impactful if we can reach out and do a better job to prevent anything from happening. And so that's how we came up with a product called Safety Check. Safety Check was originally a new report that allowed school districts to have better visibility, but it wasn't good enough. We needed to make some real advancements, both with machine learning and with our human review team, to make sure that this was a scalable solution so that you didn't have to look for a needle in a haystack, but that the most alarming alerts became very apparent to you very quickly. And I think that's been a tremendous advantage we've had and is helping us grow this very quickly and impact a lot more schools, save a lot more lives. We've also gone a step further with a friend of ours, Sergio Garcia and Angela Garcia, and the Ugly Foundation. If you're not familiar with that, UGLI Foundation, where we're trying to do even more by partnering with other nonprofits who have goals to share content and make a difference in students' life early.
I think that's really important. How our team members are also engaged in those types of foundations to not just be helping during work hours, but after hours also. Amanda, I actually wanted to go back because Brian, you mentioned Safety Check and the progression of how we've become a part of this in providing solutions for school safety and wellness. And we're known as a web content filter. So I wanted to go back and just level set on our Lightspeed Alert product, what it is, what it does, and make sure everyone is aware of that. So Amanda, can you just give us a deep dive there?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Claire. So you heard Brian talk about the why and the events that really prompted us to develop this product and put an increased focus on identifying risks to student safety. And what started as Safety Check, an offering for filter clients that provided notifications on self-harm, has really evolved into so much more and a really robust and comprehensive product. So we have not only expanded category coverage to include really critical areas of violence, bullying, explicit content, drugs, and weapons, but through the evolution of the product, we've really revolutionized the way that we provide coverage. We have integrations with productivity suites, so that covers Microsoft and Google tools, so Outlook, Gmail, Google Drive, OneDrive, all of those things. But then we pair that with our agents that catch browser activity for all sources. So students who are going to social media, YouTube, ChatGPT, all the search engines, all the browser activity, to really provide the most comprehensive coverage and be able to identify and surface concerning student behavior fast. And then I'll say that Lightspeed Alert is a lot more than a keyword product. We've invested in AI, and you heard Brian mention machine learning, but we've invested in those models that look at more than just a word or a phrase, and they really take into account the surrounding text, the documents as a whole. So they're able to discern the difference between exaggeration and hyperbole. And anybody who's spent time around teenagers knows that there's a lot of that. And you have to be able to distinguish the difference between statements like that and things that are truly concerning. So as a result, we are a lot smarter about the alerts that we're surfacing, and we continue to train and update those models frequently, so they are evolving along with us. And then the last thing I'll say, I feel like I've been talking a lot on this one, but there's so many great
That's okay.
There's a lot of good stuff to highlight. But I'll just say that we don't tackle this ever evolving landscape. It's not just technologically. We have also invested in a 24/7 human review team of safety specialists. Those people are full-time Lightspeed employees that bring an invaluable layer to the product. They go through really rigorous training and receive ongoing training, and they really complement the technology with that layer of human review that brings the ability to see patterns of behavior, connect the dots, and surface the context and an escalation to a district. So all of these things really come together to provide a really powerful tool to protect kids, And that's the most important thing. And it's a product that we're really proud of and committed to.
Yeah, I love that. And Colin, can you talk a little bit about your experience actually when you were a customer implementing Lightspeed Alert not too long ago?
Yes, Claire, of course. I mean, that is quite a context, and it's not unique, certainly to me, across the Lightspeed employees that we have. A lot of us are ex-teachers who have had experience with the products and solutions and really got behind that mission that we're all driving. I mean, I'm sitting, as you said, here in Scotland. I was looking after 40 schools across the local region, looking for a new content filter. And you know, the discussions when you look at the amount of technology that's being used in our classrooms, the idea that we're reactive and being able to review those reports goes so far, but we needed to go a bit further. And that was my first introduction to Lightspeed Alert. I deployed it across those schools and the tools, and ultimately, you know, seeing the power and the benefits for myself from being the person deploying those agents really pretty quickly and getting that technology there as that layer of protection for my students, to setting up the human review team and getting some of those first calls coming through, you know, items and areas of concern linked particularly to self-harm in the examples that I can probably draw on personally, which we just didn't have any other sight of. Things that were happening in Google Docs, things that were happening on web searches and other platforms that didn't correspond to a student's physical behavior in school, and really started a conversation to get help for that young person and get them the support that they really needed. So there's some really powerful stories, ultimately so powerful that it made me jump from looking after the teaching and learning aspect to wanting to evangelize even more and make sure that the message and the level of coverage that I seen that I was able to deploy for my students, I can now hopefully share with a wider audience and some of the countries represented here and some of the US school districts too.
Yeah, great. And when I looked at the poll, I mean, I think most of you have seen it, but from today's, I feel like, Colin, one of the things, and maybe you were nervous about this also, was staffing and resources. Like when you started, that was the #1 concern or challenge that our audience has cited in the poll. That, like, how did you think about that when you determined whether you should onboard it? And then after, like, Jamie, I'd also like to hear from you. Give us more of a deep dive on the human review team. I'm back to you, Colin.
Yeah, no, it's a really call out. And if I'm being frank and honest, I mean, I really seen the value in the product as nearly as an individual. And now certainly when I'm talking to Lightspeed customers and potential customers who are looking to onboard, I'm wanting them to learn a little bit from my mistakes. I was the person who seen the value in the end goal and wanted to get there by any means. And in some cases, that was me being quite a lone wolf. I was the primary contact for human review. I held that responsibility because I wanted that protection and I wanted to drive it very quickly to make that happen. I certainly shared that concern. This is going to be a big burden on me individually, and the shoulders were up. I was worried about that burden. And really, that was relieved the first time the safety specialist team got in touch with me. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't respond. I wasn't there. I wasn't able to provide a 24/7 service as a single individual. But I woke up to an escalated report from human review that showed me that even though I was fast asleep, action still happened. It still made its way through to law enforcement. It still we had a welfare visit by a member of the police force here in Scotland that were able to check on that young person. And I woke up to a Lightspeed safety specialist report and a police report, and that instantly relaxed me. Now, as I say, that's not necessarily best practice, and I know we'll share some resources about trying to what some of the learnings and the appropriate way to do it. But delighted to say that sharing that load and sharing that across our schools is a much more common theme. But still, that human review aspect cannot be overstated. That idea that you have that overarching umbrella there 24/7, 365 to make sure if there's something with an imminent threat that's going to cause harm to a young person in any form, that you're going to know about it. And if you're not available, the next person on the list, right down to that law enforcement contact, is going to ultimately be able to take proactive steps.
Yeah, and I can jump on the maybe
Perfect. Go ahead, Jamie.
interview and the philosophy. I'll say, Colin, that's a great story. I know we've talked about that one, your experience quite a bit. And, you know, the overarching themes with human review and what we're going for is I'd say it's easy to do business with. A subset of that is we speak K-12. And so kind of what that culminates in is what the story Colin just shared of something happens, you know, there's one of y'all or there's 5 of y'all on the other side, right? How do we integrate with that? And how do we make sure that you can actually sleep through the night, not knowing what night are you going to get the call or how's it going to come up, and can we handle that and categorize it appropriately for you? And so I'll talk about people and process. Maybe that's how I'll break it up. I think people is the first part. You know, as Amanda said, we have a lot of AI and machine learning in the product. It's very advanced. It's very cool. We love the product. That's not in human review, right? They are actually humans sitting there doing it. And that's something people have actually asked me that in the past. That I just was calling you to see if it was actually humans doing the human review. And it definitely is. The other part of that is they're full-time employees. We've had, some of our competitors, or we've kind of, as we're thinking through it, there's this idea that maybe someone can do it part-time, or maybe you can look at it very quickly. That's not the philosophy we take. We take the philosophy of full-time employees, longevity of the team, trained, and oftentimes, this isn't necessarily touted that much, but you develop a personal relationship. Our safety specialist oftentimes knows the school district that they're calling, or you'll call up and say, hey, oh, it's Jason again. You develop a good rapport, I'd say, with them, which is really good as you kind of move through some of these more critical items. And the other thing is there's no multi-tiered structure either. It's one specialist, fully trained. When they get an alert, we have a process where they take that alert from soup to nuts, right? They're not handing it off. They're not walking away. There's not a shift change. Nothing happens until that alert is fully resolved, whether that's waking Colin up in the middle of the night or contacting first responders so that when he wakes up in the morning, the alert's been handled and he can follow up on it. So that's really where very proud of our team. I'll have on training a bit too with that team. So we do, when we hire a human review specialist, extensive interview process. We love to see law enforcement background. We love to see mental health professional background. We love to see any moderation background. And we have all of that throughout the team kind of sprinkled. We also want to make sure that they're able to take action, that they will actually pick up the phone and call first responders if they need to, that they will call you, that they will do what they need to do. And so we hit on that very heavily in the interview, and I'm very proud of that team. The second piece of training, or the first piece of training, I guess, is kind of when the onboarding process to make sure they understand our process, in addition to their prior experience, so they understand what alerts are and how they should be handled. The pass line on the training test we have is 100%. You can't miss any of the questions, right? When they're going through that training. The second piece of it is kind of as it develops, and part of having full-time employees that work with each other for long periods of time. I mean, the majority of our team has been here multiple years. You develop this interaction amongst the team, right? Of, hey, you saw this. What do you think about this? The collaboration on that team is very high. In addition to some informal trainings, I think we have Nick Meck we've reached out to, and they've given us some trainings. We provide them. I'll talk about that a little bit later in our process. We've had the FBI from the San Diego office come out and give us a training on, I guess I'd say more the unusual items that you wouldn't expect when you're looking at alerts and what some of the phrases is and how you connect those things. Interestingly, that actually resulted in an alert being passed along that otherwise would not have been caught. It was phrases that everybody on this call would not necessarily recognize as being warning signs, but when you string them together with that FBI presentation that we had seen, it was actually a successful alert that this student was able to get help. Second part I'll talk about here a little bit is our process and our tools. We have a dedicated in-house product that y'all don't ever see, right? But our team uses it. And this is one of the parts I'm going to call out. It's critical that we have the ability to say, when that alert is opened, it gets closed. Nothing gets dropped. Colin gets the call. Someone else gets the call. We have the follow-up in the morning. It is soup to nuts, a closed system. So that's kind of the comfort feature of it. Second part of it is just the actual impact on the students. So when a safety specialist gets an alert, and I'll use just some generic examples, right? OMG, if I'm late again to class, I'm going to KMS. Is that an alert that needs a call to the police? or to you in the middle of the night. Well, it would be great if you could look at that student's web history, see what they were looking at right before that, maybe open up and see what other activity was happening on the device. That's what that tool enables our human review specialists to do. So they can go in and they can get that needed context to say, is this a concerning alert, or is this something that needs to be, tell the AI, thank you, that was good, but we don't need to pass this one on. And so that's a huge, powerful piece in that. And I would say that piggybacks, this is a point I think will be made later, but the way our data is, Lightspeed's been around 20 years. We say that kind of the natural exhaust from the filter is this data piece that is unique to us. I think 50%, you're going to see this stat later, but 50% of our alerts, the critical alerts, come from data that you wouldn't see with just a plugin or with just some of these other lightweight options for doing alerting and safeguarding. That gives us the ability to dig in much deeper. If we do see it at a high level, we can dig in deeper and find it, in addition to the AI being able to find it on its own. So I think that's probably a very in-depth review of human review, but I'll kick it back to you, Claire.
Yeah, I actually want to just stay with human review for a minute, Jamie, because there were some, I saw some chatter in our chat. So thank you for, providing feedback or asking some questions. But for example, like when we've been discussing this internally, some of the best practices for new districts and schools when they begin to use Lightspeed Alert and human review is setting up kind of monthly check-ins with the human review team so they can understand how they assess alerts, how they do that investigation, and it gives them kind of like the data points they need to feel confident about the way human review is managing the alerts that they're seeing. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that, because as you said, the technology that human review sees is a closed system, and not all of that flows to the customer for various reasons, right? Privacy and things like that. But if you could just talk about that best practice, that's worked very well for many of our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first part of that is setting it up correctly, implementing it. We have a great team to help you get off the ground. We have a lot of resources that are kind of pre-baked. So there's, the legalese, as you would. Being a lawyer, I'll refrain from too many lawyer jokes. That's hard to. But we have a lot of documentation that you can drop straight into your acceptable use policy, flow charts. What does this alert mean? Education materials that you can distribute to people who are going to be on that escalation list, or to anybody in your organization that just has questions. The second piece of that is once you get it set up and we're rolling and we're live doing it, you're going to get those calls occasionally from, I'm going to pick on one of our human reviewers, Jason. You're going to get that call from Jason, right, over and over the course of months and years. Sometimes that evolves into, if it's helpful, maybe a monthly meeting with our head of human review, Brock Anderson. He's worked with him for many years. He runs that team very well. That is valuable to us. We are not going to shy away from that. That's frankly how we built and evolved the tool, right? Is getting feedback from the end user. Hey, this is the way I like to see it. This is creating a huge problem for me. Can we tweak it this way? Easy to do business with, and speaking K-12 comes directly out of that. And I'll say that's, I will hit on that. Maybe one other point there's a lot of little things that will come up that maybe people will be familiar with on this or not, but when you get CSAM material, how do you handle that? You don't want us emailing that to you and saying, hey, deal with this. We don't do that, right? We send it straight to NCMEC, handle it under the criminal laws, and quarantine it basically. Neglect and abuse, it triggers your mandatory reporting process. We're going to make sure that we have a handshake between you and the human reviewer that says, you've got it, I've got it, I'm going to send it in through our, every school is going to have a mandatory neglect and abuse reporting process. And so that's not just going to be in the, out there for you to find and deal with. We're going to serve that up to you in a way that's easy. And all of that has really come out of that feedback directly from districts. So very excited to talk with school districts, the human review team, and to, put that into our processes.
Yeah, great. So as you can see, like human review is an integral part. It's not just like a technology solution. We also have this, technology and resources. And I think the investment that you talked about, Jamie, and BT in our human review team is a testament to knowing that or in K-12 staffing is slim, right? Like there's a need for expanding resources and expertise in an area that a lot of educators don't have, right? Understanding how to investigate these types of incidents or having the additional training that's needed to be able to take a critical eye to what a student is typing into digital behavior. I don't know if Cullen, you can comment, or anyone on the panel, about some of the things that when you started turned on alert, what you thought was surprising versus you expected, and how, what is that like a value initially that you saw?
I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, forgive me for butchering any actual references to this, but there's a really interesting story and sort of perception here around what a young person really portrays when they walk into a physical school building. What is it they are living and breathing? What persona? How much of their actual self are they choosing to share with their friends? How much are they sharing with the teachers that they encounter? What mask are they necessarily putting on and wearing to school? There are certainly some very confident young people who will maybe be happy to confide and share details of how they're feeling, and that is brilliant. To be able to have that dialogue and that trust and that psychological safety within a school building with counselors, with employees, with adults you trust, that's great. However, in all too many cases, and that is greater, and anything greater than 0, anything greater than 1% of students who feel that they are keeping something back, keeping something behind themselves, they're internalizing all of that. What I find, and what I think a lot of our customers who are using Alert find, that there's a real low barrier to being able to confide in a digital device. It feels really, there's not to the same level of consequence. And it's very common for us to see alerts coming through paraphrased with sentences like, "I don't care that my teachers can see this," as they're writing some form of note about their diary entry about how they're feeling. They're choosing that digital way from the safety of perhaps their bedroom if devices are going home. And they're choosing a safe space, a safe platform, a safe technology to them to be able to sort of open up a little bit more. And that's a responsibility that we have in the K-12, in the school sector, that we, once we know that is a space and a place where communication is effective and communication is happening, it's something we want to be monitoring and we want to be checking, and something increasingly when we're talking to our customers with other products, we're talking about that when people are coming forward and going, "Hey, what do Lightspeed do?" We want to make sure that we engage them on this particular area. It's part of that mission, and we want to make sure that they're thinking about these areas. It's interesting that we have these two sort of spaces between what happens in a productivity platform and what happens on the device. Hey, we cover both. We give you that full coverage. We don't put boundaries up. We want to make sure that everywhere there is a chance for a young person to be potentially psychologically safe and confiding and opening up about how they're feeling and giving us those potential markers for any aspect of student safety, that we're able to be there. We're able to internalize it, first of all, with that AI to remove a lot of the noise from the system, escalate those in high-level cases to either to the school districts and schools themselves, or to the human review team for that more imminent response if needed. But it all drives from that idea that what we see is a student acting in a very different way when they're on a digital device. They're in a much more comfortable space, is certainly my experience, Claire.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Jamie and BT can also add, but when talking to clients, especially some of the counselors, they say, well, we know the students that are lined up outside of our door and, coming in for support. What we don't know is the ones that are crying out for help, what we don't see. And, instead of thinking it as adding a lot of, it actually helps them focus on the most needed, even if they're not saying it out loud, I think. So, and I think that's one of the big benefits of this type of a technology to add into your larger student wellness and student safety ecosystem. I mean, BT, you can kind of talk about how this fits in, because there's obviously a lot of different pieces in that student safety ecosystem that most schools are deploying.
Right. I think you hit the point I would make, which is the students who aren't talking to anyone either at the highest risk. They're not communicating with their parents or their peers or with the counselors, and those are the ones we want to get to. I think we see that in a lot of our alerts, especially the level, 3 or 4 more critical alerts. Those are the ones that Colin referred to. I don't care if my teachers can do this. I'm thinking about doing myself or whatever it may be. Those are the ones we want to escalate very quickly. We have hundreds, thousands of examples of us having the ability to get a hold of the school resource officer or somebody else very quickly, and even showing up to the door of a student who is in the middle of harming themselves and making that not happen. So I'm really, really proud of that. It's part of the reason it's so successful, and has a lot to do with the human review. I'd also say that we didn't really cover it, we may cover it later, but student data privacy is very, very critical to us. And it's been a part of everything we do since the beginning of our filtering 25 years ago. By the way, I have been here the entire 25 years. You can tell by my haggard look. And so student data privacy is so critical. And I think that's important to understand. And that's something a counselor and a student have together, but you need it with technology too. And I think that's really critical to help ease people's concerns that they have in the year round, what we're looking at and what we're sharing and how we're sharing it, and how Jamie and his team approach that, all the way down to the human reviewers who are full-time employees, which makes a big difference between a contractor or something that's maybe as secure as far as the privacy goes.
Yeah, and I'd piggyback on that by you can tell what's important to a company by where they put their focus, and by focus I mean money. And so we have full-time human reviewers that are highly trained. We're focused on it. They're valuable to us. We have a full-time dedicated director of privacy. We focus on it. It's important to us. And that's a one single lane job, right? And a lot of other folks, you don't see focus on like that. And that's something I think we pride ourselves on a little bit here at Lightspeed, is the focus on privacy.
We actually have a great website I'll just plug, which is on our website. If you look at it's like Lightspeed Trust, and that just shows the full, all the detail around our focus on data privacy and security, actually both pieces. I will say congratulations to the team, because we're just releasing our SOC 2 compliance today via press release. So that's a lot of work, which we're excited for internally. So let's actually I feel like we talked about 2 main things, which I feel like came through on the poll, which is resourcing being kind of a concern and an issue. And I think data privacy is one of those things that's top of mind. And so I think if you're sitting, you're watching this webinar and you're thinking, I'm really passionate about this. I want to start working with a solution like this in my school or my district. And these are some of the resistance that I'm meeting. I think, talking to, we're happy to talk to you about those things and give you more peer case studies about how different districts have waded through that. Colin talked about being the lone wolf. We definitely have some of our customers who have taken that role, but others who have, worked with us to help build consensus at their districts so that they can bring on tools like this to add to their safety ecosystem, and how important it is. Amanda, I wondered if you could actually jump in and talk a little bit about tip line, because I think this is another piece in the puzzle of safety, and how the Lightspeed tip line, I think you and Jamie both could probably hop in here and just talk a little bit about that additional feature.
Yeah. Well, I might actually step back a little bit and talk more holistically about the continued investment that we're making in the product in general.
Great.
As a part of that. But you've heard us give some different perspectives here and really touch on the need for a product like this and how that need continues to grow. So hopefully you picked up on the fact that we take the space that we're in really seriously, and we know how valuable and important a tool like this is. So we're committed to investing in it and making it even more robust. One of the recent things that we have rolled out is a tip line. So that's also supported by our human review team. It really expands that student safety coverage beyond just the digital behavior on devices by giving students and their peers and the school community, parents, teachers, the ability to report concerning behavior. So those tips can be submitted via email, voicemail, or online form. And it's just a great complement to alert and to rounding out, your coverage and broadening that into the community. Another thing that we've recently done is expanded our coverage to include Spanish language capabilities. So that was released earlier this year, but our models are trained in that native language. So we don't need to rely on translation tools. And that means that, in the same way that machine learning can learn and update and get smarter for English, it's doing that for Spanish. So it can pick up on things like slang that a translation tool wouldn't. And then Spanish is also supported by our human review team. So your workflow doesn't change. You have that same extra layer of human review and the ability to escalate high risk and imminent Spanish alerts. And then those alerts are also translated directly into the customer UI. So you don't have to have Spanish speaking staff to take advantage of that feature. And anybody who has Spanish speaking students can turn that on and then start protecting more kids. So that's just kind of the tip of the iceberg, really, on like what we've been working on. We're always, really working on the next thing. We've got a full roadmap on the horizon. One of the next things that we're working on is a feature that will allow districts to hold back or quarantine emails that contain potentially harmful or concerning images, sometimes illegal things, and prevent those from getting to the intended recipients and from them being exposed to that type of content. So just a little bit about, continued investment and the evolution of this product. And that's really important to us to keep up with what's happening in schools and keep broadening that out so we can protect more kids.
Yeah, that's great, Amanda. I think one question I have is, if I'm in the middle of the school year, is this something that I can implement and get started with, or is it something that I have to wait for summer? Is it going to be disruptive? Any of the panelists can jump in here.
It should be seamless to the students, of course. And with the best practices that you build, you don't need a robust plan if you enable human review. So it can be a fairly simple thing, and likely if you don't wait, you'll have a better impact and protect more students and address mental health quicker. You think about the time right now in the United States, there's state testing about to start that's very disruptive to students' mental health, and stress happens and things happen. So I think, there's never a bad time to implement it, of course. And I think our team does a really good job of making sure that you don't bite off more than you can chew or end up in a situation that could be challenging for you. And again, if you're a current customer, the agents are already on your devices. We're already keeping you super compliant and monitoring and filtering. And so this is just a better reporting tool with human reviewers to keep a lot of the hard work off your plate.
That's great. And I actually want to ask about reporting, because you brought up something great, Brian, which is, testing, right? That's like a high anxiety time period for students. There's so I don't know, Cullen, in your experience, or Jamie or Amanda, can you talk a little bit about the reporting capabilities and how you maybe used them as you were thinking about your student wellness programs?
I can go here with another sort of direct reference, Claire, if it's useful. I mean,
yeah,
it's all very well. As I say, we called out a few times where a student perhaps is, extending the concern that is seen by a student counselor into the digital ecosystem, and it adds additional context. I think that idea where you talk about testing periods and examination periods, the stresses that come with there are often from the young people that BT called out earlier, the ones that are communicating are not communicating at all, and there's no other markers or pieces of information. I think really critical in those scenarios that we can identify when someone is particularly stressed or dealing with a mental health challenge. I speak specifically to one young person I know from the case I dealt with. There was no other information, and the examination pressures were first uncovered on Lightspeed Alert within the student body I was supporting. Ultimately required sort of professional medical assistance and being checked into a mental health facility to be able to help get that young person the help they needed.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think just to add, one of our clients we were just meeting with, they use the reporting data to see like certain times when potentially violence seems to be up. It could be around certain periods of the year, or Friday nights. And actually they kind of use that to predict and staff from a security perspective. And so I think it can be extremely valuable, to once implemented to be able to like start to fine tune or use the data to determine like mental health programs that need to be improved, or, like timing of them, just different ways that the school community can work together and use like that data as a source to get better and be more proactive in providing the resources and programs that students and or staff need to get through some of those times that are particularly challenging for the student body. Okay, great. So let me just take a look at time here. Anyone else want to jump in on some things that we haven't covered that are specifically you're passionate about or important for our team to our audience to know about Lightspeed and or the alert tool?
I could jump in with, it's just, kind of self brag here, but for Lightspeed, one of the things we've strived to do with human review is to empower, and alert generally, is to empower the customer to do their job. So we've got a lot of anecdotes over the years of, oh, here's one, we jumped in and the student was helped in this way, or, you guys saw this, not using details, but this information student had drafted something that had happened to them, but never sent it to the teacher. We saw it, alerted on it. We have many stories like that where we feel good at the end of the day. The thing that's really stuck with me, and I know a lot of the other team, is when we're able to empower you to do your job. And so it was probably 2 years ago, I had a customer say, hey, if the school won't buy this next year, I'm buying it myself. Like we're keeping it on because I've had all these things happen. And it was things that we had not even known about. And so for me, that was one of kind of the highlight of, the last several years has been knowing that we allow y'all to do your job at an exponentially greater amount. And so that, for every one customer we help, they're going out and helping 50, 100 people. And so that's just stuck with me, kind of the way it scales and the way it multiplies.
Yeah.
So I would throw that out there. It's just top of mind for me.
Yeah. No, it makes total sense. Okay, great. Amanda, anything else to add on the product side since you're overseeing that? Is there ways for the audience to provide input? Actually, through the chat, if you are a client and you have ideas or thoughts of things that you have been thinking about from an alert perspective, I think that's a good chance for you to add them in to the chat. But any other thoughts, Amanda, on where the product's going or what you want people to know about?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say that everything that we do, or nothing that we do, happens in a vacuum. We are always working with districts and our customers to get their feedback, to show them concepts. So it's a very collaborative process. It really has to be. We want to know how things are changing in your schools and the trends that you're seeing with students. We want to stay on top of all of that. So we always welcome feedback, and we welcome people who want to partner with us, early testers, all of those things. We do have a customer portal where people can pose questions, and you can reach out to us directly too. We're happy to fold you into some of our user groups and our research. I guess the other thing that I would just say, we've talked a lot about what the product does, the support that we have for it. We have integrations. We cover browser activity. Our human review team is second to none. You're not just dealing with one data point though from alert. We touched on this a little bit, but people who have filter can also see that search history. Our human review team has that tool and they're able to see patterns of behavior, and your team has that tool to see that additional context. But you really have to put all of those things together to build the safest place for kids. So that's what we're doing. That's, we're standing behind our mission and this product, and it's not stopping here. It's, it's on my mind. It's on my team's mind. We're working on it every day, and the impact that we're making, we feel that, we hear it from you, and we want to continue to do that. So we welcome your partnership, and we'll continue to share with you the things that our team is working on.
Great, thank you. So I'm gonna, before we finish up with some questions, and I'm just gonna give you another minute or some more time to add any additional questions you may have in the chat for the audience, whether it's around human review or how do you kind of support this in your district. We do have some best practice and guides that can help you think through this. 7 strategies for improving student safety and technology. Case studies. This one specifically is from San Marcos, which was on the earlier webinar. And we'll be putting those in for you to download. Also our data privacy and our commitment to security. That is like a one-pager that's helpful for you to have. I also wanted to, I think Jamie referred to this, and Amanda, and even Colin, but we do have a best practices guide, which is, highlights a number of our districts and customers and how they went through the process of implementing this type of technology. What were the internal discussions they had around setting up escalation lists? Like, how did they do that between their building leaders, their counselors, the security teams they have, or the police? So this is really can be a helpful asset. Please let us know in the chat if you would like a copy of it. It is on our client customer portal, so it's behind a login. But let us know, and we can let you we can give you a copy of that. We'll add that in. The other thing I'm going to actually let you know is we do have another poll. So we're going to put that up in a second. So take a look at that, and then I'm going to switch into just some final Q&As. I think we covered some of the questions that did come in, so that's good. I may reiterate them, but one question was around the involvement of police departments, and if your district happens to span multiple jurisdictions. I think maybe Jamie, you might be the best to respond to that. So they're asking, what if my district spans multiple police departments? Have you dealt with that before, and how is that handled?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's handled if you have a preferred person, we reach out to your agency that you work with. That's handled in our call tree when you set up the system. If for some reason that student falls outside the special instructions, or something happens in that tree, or if it's not designated, they reach out to first responders in the way anyone would. I mean, they do it a lot, so they know what to expect. But essentially, they'll give the information that we have on the student, and then that 911 center will route it to the correct agency for that call.
Okay, great. Yeah, we definitely know that at least in the U.S., particularly Texas, we have some big districts that cover a lot of ground, and so that's an area where their safety team is working closely with multiple community stakeholders there. So I think that's great. Another question is around, and I think actually, Jimmy, you might have also mentioned this, but is there current acceptable use policy? I mean, this may need a follow-up from a Lightspeed representative, but is there acceptable use policy? Does that need to be edited? How do other schools handle when they implement a solution like Alert?
Yeah, typically what we see is we have a kind of a pre-baked language that you can drop into your acceptable use policy that covers everything you need to cover for implementing Alert. You can also do a one-off add to that policy and distribute it to your parents and your students if it's in the middle of the year. We have different kind of flows depending on when you're doing it. But the idea is that it just slips kind of seamlessly in that policy as another paragraph.
Yeah, great. And I think like you said, we do have example language and templates, not just for the AUP, but also to help you communicate to parents, you know, your safety contact. So anyone, go ahead, Jamie, sorry.
Oh, no, you're hitting it. I'm just saying what you're saying, but there's an entire packet that goes with, all right, I'd like to get Alert all the way to I've got Alert turned on and now everyone knows what they're doing. We have a way to walk you through that with the documents. You know, there's no reason for you to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, great. This is actually a larger question, I would say, around the role of the IT director today for schools and districts. And the question is around the role of the IT director has changed significantly as it pertains to education. In light of evolving technology and increasing importance of digital security and safety at education institutions, schools, and districts, can you outline the top 3 critical needs that an IT director position really needs to have to enhance school safety?
I think I can take this one. What we've seen, look, the first good news is the trends are going in the right direction. A few years ago, we were at our district advisory council and asked how many people would be willing to implement a tool like this, and a lot didn't raise their hand. And since then, everyone in the room just a week ago or also raised their hand and said they either had it or were planning to have it. So I think the trends are going the right way. I think human review makes it easy. I think there's state legislation coming, and I think this is aligned with CIPA compliance and other tools that you already have or requirements you have. But what we've seen work really well, and we had an individual at our advisory council explain this to us, is having an IT director collect data, not just the data for the students and their mental health at your particular school, but the collective data of what's the trends are in education or in your community or in your state or wherever you may be. And once you have that, you can better understand the issues and the challenges. And what this person did was he tried to build consensus by having students, staff, parents, school board all understand what he was doing, why he was doing it, and making it really clear to them so that it's not this IT director's idea or the technology department's new toy, but rather a very critical solution that can protect lives. And so building consensus was a big part of what he said was successful. We've heard that from a lot of other customers. And then borrowing best practices. Heroes talk about it a lot today. You even had a number of questions on the side here that are around how do I do this, exactly how do I set this up. And the other good news is you don't have to know how to do that. There's been years of practice from other customers who have already implemented this. Colin's early in this webinar, he was a lone wolf and he made mistakes. Somebody else has already done that. We collected that data and we can get back to you and help you with some best practices. And then the other one that really stood out to me was if you're building this consensus and a lot of support in the community from parents and teachers and staff and students, they become more aware of it. And if you can share the wins, then you can really make progress. And that helps you get even more backing. When it's time to find funds, the funds will be there because mom and dad will know, because the board will know, because the students will know, and they will know of example that somebody got help. And I think all of those things make a really big difference. And that's what we're seeing from our most successful customers is kind of like 3 or 4 steps that you build consensus and communicate with everyone prior to that and share your wins.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer. And the IT leadership at San Marcos really personified that in the work that they've done there, because they've taken the data they've gotten from Alert and kind of brought it to the larger school community and worked on new grant applications to fund, a growth in their school safety programs and mental health programs. And I think, so that's actually a case study you should take a look at or watch, the previous webinar. Christy talks about that really well, but that's, you hit the nail on the head. I think the role of IT is evolving. So thanks, BT, for that response. Okay, I think we are about at time. I am going to, let me see if I have another slide to share with you. I think we have a feedback survey. We would love to hear about what you'd liked and what we could improve on the webinar. We want to know if you need support in talking about this type of solution within your district. We have lots of resources, as the team has talked about, that we've developed. And as Brian said, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. We have hundreds upon hundreds of schools and district teams that have implemented this type of solution successfully and saved lives. And that's the important part about why we're here today and why we need to move quickly on these types of programs across all schools and districts across the country. So thanks again for joining us today. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Cullen. Thank you, Jamie and Amanda. And all the audience for taking the time today. Please let us know how we can support you at Lightspeed, and take your survey. Thank you. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.